Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Our school was experiencing what you could call a crime wave of locker thefts. Students kept having their stuff stolen from their locked lockers. Not everyone was hit, but everyone knew someone who was. The school administration kept insisting it was our fault for sharing locker combinations with friends. They even had the nerve to charge us $175 each time we needed to get the combination changed on a locker after a theft, claiming we were responsible for compromising our own security. My AirPods and graphing calculator disappeared from my locker one day. I had never shared my combination with anyone, mainly because my friends were the kind of jokesters who'd definitely mess with my stuff if they had the chance. So there I was, out $250 for the AirPods and calculator, plus another $175 for changing the combination. Keep in mind this was 2018 money, which still hurt plenty. "This is ridiculous," my dad said when I told him about the theft. "These TI-86 calculators aren't cheap and those AirPods were brand new." Luckily, my dad was close friends with Detective Martinez from the county police. We all called him Uncle Mike. When he heard about what happened, he decided to look into it. "I'll stop by the school tomorrow," Uncle Mike told us over dinner one night. "Something's not adding up here." He went to the school to request the security camera footage from the day my stuff was stolen. The principal, Mr. Thompson, completely dismissed him. "There's no systematic theft problem here," Mr. Thompson said firmly. "The student must have shared his combination. We're not releasing any footage without a warrant." When Uncle Mike actually got the warrant, the school fought it in court, claiming student privacy concerns. One evening, Uncle Mike showed up at our house carrying a MacBook Pro and a laptop bag. "Here's what we're going to do," he said with a slight grin. "Put this in your locker tomorrow. Tell everyone about your new laptop. Make sure word gets around." "You sure about this, Uncle Mike?" "Trust me, kid. We'll catch whoever's behind this." 3 days later, I opened my locker between classes to find everything gone. The laptop, the bag, even my Monster Energy drink, and some pens. I immediately texted Uncle Mike. "The laptop's gone? Perfect. Now watch the show unfold. By the way, you've officially reported this theft to the police." The next morning, Uncle Mike arrived with 3 uniformed officers. They pulled a student named Marcus out of class along with his mother, Mrs. Chen, who worked in the front office. Mr. Thompson came storming out of his office. "You can't just barge in here and disrupt my school," he shouted. "This is completely unacceptable." Uncle Mike stayed perfectly calm. "Actually, we can. We have probable cause and a warrant." Turns out there was a GPS tracker in the laptop bag. Uncle Mike had tracked it straight to Marcus's house. Since the MacBook was worth over $1,000, it was an instant felony. The next day, Uncle Mike set up a table just outside school grounds with a banner reading, "Have you had items stolen from your locker? Report it here." The local paper's headline the following morning read, "Mother-son duo behind high school theft ring." Marcus had allegedly used his mom's login credentials to access the school network and get everyone's locker combinations. He would then randomly check lockers for valuable items to steal. "How many cases did you end up with?" I asked Uncle Mike later. 9 felonies and 35 misdemeanors, he replied. Each locker counts as a separate charge. The felonies alone add up to about $12,000 in stolen property, plus another $3,000 in misdemeanors, and that's just what we could prove. The story didn't end there. Everyone who'd been charged the $175 locker fee joined in a class action lawsuit against the school district. There were 218 people in total, and we each got $85 after legal fees. Mr. Thompson lost his job for ignoring the obvious theft problem. During the trial, Marcus and his mom refused a plea deal of 10 years for him, 5 in juvenile detention, 5 in adult prison, and 15 years for her. Big mistake. "The evidence is overwhelming," the judge said during sentencing. "We have security footage of the defendant accessing multiple lockers and recovered stolen property matching every single charge." Marcus ended up with 9 years in prison plus 35 months of probation. His mom got 18 years with 6 years of probation. The best part, I got my calculator back. My name was still engraved inside the battery compartment, just like I'd left it. I still have it, along with this wild story to tell. The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd be sharing this wild story, but here goes. This happened about 6 months ago, and I'm still amazed by the sheer audacity of my neighbor, Karen. Some background. I'm a 35-year-old software developer who worked hard and saved up to buy my dream car, a used 2018 Audi R8 V10 Plus in Daytona Gray. I'm not trying to brag, but this detail is important for the story. I bought it last year after getting a major promotion and bonus at work. It wasn't new, but it was in pristine condition with only 12,000 miles on it. Enter Karen, my 40-something neighbor who moved into the house next door about 2 years ago. She's your stereotypical entitled suburbanite, always complaining about everything from other neighbors' lawn maintenance to kids playing too loudly in their own backyards. I tried to be polite but distant, limiting our interactions to basic neighborly waves. From the day I brought the R8 home, Karen seemed obsessed with it. She'd constantly make comments about how some people have too much money and how that car is too flashy for this neighborhood. I mostly ignored her remarks and kept to myself. One Saturday morning, I woke up to find my car missing from my driveway. At first, I thought I was still half asleep. Surely I was imagining things. But no, the R8 was definitely gone. I immediately checked my security cameras. I had installed them after Karen started acting weird about the car. And what I saw made my jaw drop. At 7:15 a.m., Karen had walked up to my house, found the spare key I kept hidden under a fake rock near the garage. Yes, I know that was stupid. Lesson learned. And simply drove off in my car like she owned it. The audacity was breathtaking. I immediately called the police to report the theft. While waiting for them to arrive, I called Karen's cell phone. I had it from a neighborhood directory. The conversation went something like this. Me. Karen, where is my car? Karen, in her most entitled voice. Oh, I'm just borrowing it for a few hours. I have a breakfast meeting with some important clients, and I needed to make a good impression. Me. That's theft. Return my car immediately, or I'm pressing charges. Karen. Don't be ridiculous. Possession is ownership. Everyone knows that. I have the car now, so it's mine to use. Besides, you're being selfish keeping such a nice car all to yourself. You should be happy to help a neighbor make a good impression. Me. That's not how property law works. I've already called the police. Karen. You what? How dare you? I'll report you for harassment. This is a civil matter between neighbors. She hung up on me, but not before I heard the distinctive roar of my R8's V10 engine in the background. I was furious, but tried to stay calm as I waited for the police. 2 officers arrived within minutes. I showed them the security footage and played the recording of my phone conversation with Karen. I always record important calls, another habit that proved useful. They were as baffled by her behavior as I was. One officer, Officer Rodriguez, couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. In 15 years on the force, I've heard some crazy justifications for theft, but possession as ownership is a new one. They immediately put out an alert for my car. Karen wasn't exactly being subtle. A Daytona gray Audi R8 isn't exactly common in our suburban area. Within 30 minutes, another patrol car spotted her pulling into an upscale restaurant's parking lot about 5 miles away. I got to ride along with Officer Rodriguez to the restaurant. They wanted me there to verify the car's condition. When we arrived, there was already another police car blocking my R8 in its parking spot. Karen was standing next to it, arms crossed, looking indignant as ever. As we approached, she started yelling, "This is ridiculous! I was going to return it. He's just being dramatic." Officer Rodriguez wasn't having any of it. "Ma'am, you took a vehicle without the owner's permission. That's grand theft auto, a felony offense. Please put your hands behind your back." Karen's face went through several shades of red as she was being handcuffed. But, I'm a respected member of this community. I'm on the Homeowners Association board. You can't arrest me. I was just borrowing it." The other officer checking my car called out, "Sir, you might want to see this." I walked over and my heart sank. Karen had somehow managed to scrape the front splitter on what I assume was a curb or driveway entrance. There was also a fresh coffee stain on the passenger seat's leather. The car had only been in her possession for about 2 hours, but she'd already managed to damage it. "I want to press charges," I told Officer Rodriguez without hesitation. Karen's eyes widened. "You can't be serious. It's just a car. I was going to get it detailed before returning it anyway." "Ma'am, please stop talking," Officer Rodriguez advised her. "Everything you're saying is being recorded and can be used against you." As they put Karen in the back of the patrol car, she was still yelling about how I was being unreasonable and how neighbors are supposed to help each other. I had to wait for crime scene photos to be taken, standard procedure for vehicle theft. But then I was allowed to take my car home. The damage to the front splitter alone would cost several $1,000s to repair. The next few days were interesting. Karen's husband, who had apparently been out of town during this incident, came over to try to work something out. He offered to pay for the damages if I dropped the charges. I declined. This wasn't about money. It was about consequences for absolutely insane behavior. Word spread through the neighborhood quickly. Some neighbors shared their own Karen stories, though none quite as extreme as Grand Theft Auto. Apparently, she had a history of helping herself to other people's property, garden tools, lawn furniture, etc. always with the same entitled attitude that she had some right to use whatever she wanted. The legal process moved forward. Karen was charged with grand theft auto, a felony in our state. Her lawyer initially tried to play it off as a misunderstanding between neighbors, but the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, my recorded phone call, and her own statements to the police. She was also charged with criminal mischief for the damage to the car. The prosecutor was particularly interested in the phone recording where she explicitly stated, "Possession is ownership." It showed clear intent and a disturbing lack of regard for property rights. Karen's initial court appearance was a sight to behold. She showed up in designer clothes, clearly trying to project an image of a respectable suburban mom who couldn't possibly be a criminal. Her lawyer tried to argue for minimal bail, claiming she was a pillar of the community with no flight risk. The prosecutor countered by playing my security footage and phone recording. The judge's expression was priceless when he heard Karen's possession is ownership theory. Bail was set at $50,000. Karen's husband posted bail, but she was ordered to wear an ankle monitor and stay at least 500 feet away from me and my property. She violated this order almost immediately by trying to leave a note on my door about how I was ruining her life over a simple misunderstanding. The responding officer who caught her doing this was the same officer Rodriguez from the original theft. He later told me he'd never seen someone so determined to make their own situation worse. Meanwhile, I had to deal with getting my car repaired. The front splitter damage alone cost $4,800 to fix, and the leather seat needed professional restoration due to the coffee stain, adding another $2,200 to the bill. My insurance covered it, but they immediately began proceedings to recover the costs from Karen. The criminal case moved forward, and Karen's attitude didn't improve. She rejected a fairly generous plea deal that would have given her probation and community service. Her lawyer practically begged her to take it, but she insisted on going to trial, still maintaining she had done nothing wrong. The trial itself was relatively short, the evidence was overwhelming, and Karen's testimony did her no favors. When asked why she thought she had the right to take my car, she went on a 10-minute rant about community property and how successful people have an obligation to share their wealth. The jury was visibly struggling not to laugh. It took the jury less than 2 hours to return a guilty verdict on all counts. The judge, clearly unimpressed with Karen's lack of remorse, sentenced her to 18 months in state prison, plus 3 years of probation after release. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the damage to my car. Karen's face when the sentence was announced was a study in shocked entitlement. She actually tried to argue with the judge, saying, "But I can't go to prison. What about my social standing? What about my position on the homeowners association board?" The judge's response was perfect. Perhaps you should have considered those things before deciding that possession is ownership applied to other people's vehicles. Karen's husband filed for divorce while she was in prison. Apparently this incident was the last straw in a long pattern of entitled behavior. He sold their house and moved away, leaving Karen with nothing but consequences when she got out. As for me, I installed a much better security system and never hide spare keys outside anymore. The R8 is running perfectly after the repairs, and I actually upgraded the security features on it too. The neighborhood is much quieter now. The homeowners association board is under new management, and people seem more respectful of each other's property. Sometimes I see new neighbors admiring the R8 from a distance, but nobody has tried to claim ownership through possession since Karen. Update, 6 months later. I thought you all might be interested in what happened after Karen was released from prison. She served 14 months of her 18-month sentence. She didn't learn much from the experience. Within a week of her release, she violated her probation by attempting to contact me through social media, creating multiple fake accounts to send messages about how I destroyed her life. Her probation officer wasn't amused, and she spent another 30 days in county jail for the violation. The restitution payments have been irregular at best. She's required to pay $7,000 for the car damages plus legal fees, but so far has only paid about $500. My insurance company's lawyers are handling the collection process, and they're considering pursuing wage garnishment. Karen now lives in an apartment complex about 20 miles away. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she tried to join their homeowners association board but was rejected when her criminal record came up in the background check. Apparently she threw such a fit about it that she's now banned from their community meetings. The most satisfying part? Her possession is ownership quote has become something of a local legend. I've heard people use it sarcastically when someone borrows something. Hey, careful now, possession is ownership. It's become a running joke in the neighborhood. My security camera footage of her taking the car even ended up being used in a police training seminar about entitled behavior and property crimes. Officer Rodriguez tells me they use it as an example of what not to say when caught stealing. The whole experience taught me a lot about standing up to entitled people and the importance of documentation. Those security cameras and recorded phone calls made all the difference in getting justice. As for the R8, it's still running beautifully, and I've added a few more security features including a kill switch and GPS tracker. Sometimes I look at that repaired front splitter and shake my head at the absurdity of it all, but mostly I'm just grateful that justice was served and that Karen's possession is ownership philosophy earned her exactly what she deserved. The neighborhood is definitely better off without her, and I hear the new Homeowners Association board is much more focused on actual community issues rather than policing people's lives. Sometimes the best karma is simply letting entitled people face the natural consequences of their actions. The next one is a malicious compliances story. I worked in an accounting department at a small business. My boss, Gary, was great and gave us lots of autonomy to get everything done. It was a small business, and over the years, as is common in small businesses, I picked up a number of duties that weren't strictly in my job description but were pretty important. We also had a number of processes that were not well documented, but we were understaffed and not able to make any real changes. Things overall were pretty good though, and our work flowed well and everyone was happy. Not everyone though. Gary's boss, Carl, recently had taken over as president of the company and wanted to slash costs. Gary was one of the highest paid employees, and Carl tried to get him to take a pay cut or a cut in hours. When Gary refused, Carl fired him and shortly replaced him with Matt, who was much less experienced and much less qualified. Around this time, I used my leverage with Carl to get a solid raise. I knew Carl would be looking to replace me soon like he did Gary, but I was too essential to lose without Gary there either. I figured I had about 6 months, which lined up with about when I was planning to move out of state anyway. So, knowing that when I did leave, my coworkers would be stuck picking up the slack of my job, particularly all the ancillary stuff I had picked up that was not documented at all, I started writing a detailed manual for my own job when I had time here and there. I didn't really care for Matt or Carl, but I figured it would save my coworkers a lot of stress. Matt was a poor accountant and a worse manager. He was an awful micromanager with no concept of the bigger picture. Pretty quickly, he noticed that I was spending time doing all these other duties not in my JD. He told me I was only to work on projects he assigned me directly. I tried to point out all the things that would not get done if I didn't do that. He was having none of it, and told me not to worry about it, as it wasn't my job. Sure thing, boss. I stopped doing anything except what he told me to do. And the department started falling apart. Customer emails went unanswered, software stopped working with no one to support it, files weren't organized, etc. I normally took care of these and 100 other things, but Matt was pretty clear I'm not to do any of it. I also stopped working on my manual. After a few months of this, but sooner than I expected, I was laid off by Carl and Matt for budgetary reasons. Of course, they listed my job on Indeed that same day for a laughably low salary. I was given no warning, just sat down for a meeting with the two and walked out the door. Matt didn't allow me to take anything from my desk, access my computer, or say my goodbyes to my coworkers. He was also very clear I was not to retain any company documents or information. Sure thing, boss. So I left, and I heard from coworkers still there that over the next few weeks things took an even worse nosedive. They weren't able to fill my job, and nobody could cover most of my actual job duties or any of my ancillary duties. By this point, vendors weren't being paid, and payroll wasn't going out on time, and then I got the call. Matt found the file I had left in a conspicuous spot on the network drive. Job manual and processes.zip. It was encrypted. What's in it? Oh, just a draft of all my job duties and everything I was responsible for that I worked on during downtime. Why was it even encrypted? Well, it had a bunch of confidential data and passwords in it, boss. What's the password? Sorry, boss, I don't know. I didn't retain it after leaving, but it's in my files. In reality, since it wasn't finished, the manual wasn't going to be some panacea for all the company's problems, but I had padded it with a lot of images, so I imagine the file size was pretty attractive, and the password was indeed in my files. If Matt cared to look, he'd find an unlabeled sticky note with a nondescript string of letters and numbers in a random folder in one of my 24 filing cabinets. As an epilogue, about 3 months after I talked to Matt, Carl fired him after discovering what a disaster the department had become. My coworkers both left around the same time for better opportunities. Carl's still been unable to fill any of these jobs after almost 18 months, so the entire accounting department is staffed by contractors and consultants, who I am sure are costing the company a fortune. I hear the board is looking for a change in company presidents. The next one is an entitled people story. I'm 47M, but this event occurred the week of Halloween 2002, back when I was 25. Now, Halloween was on a Thursday, and the costume party I was attending was the Saturday before, the 26th. This is important for the story. Also important to know is that I was recovering from a stroke I'd had 3 months prior. My stepbrother, then 25M, was throwing a costume party at his house, and I was really looking forward to it, especially since I hadn't done much socially that past few months. My buddy Fernando and I were excited to go. I was dressed up as Uncle Fester from the Addams Family, and Fernando was going as Zorro. We had to make a pit stop at the nearby Walmart so Fernando could grab a plastic sword for his costume. I decided to pick up a few extra snacks and drinks, so I went in too. We'd get stopped by random customers who complimented our costumes, and we thanked them, but we were men on a mission. Once we grabbed everything we needed, we headed to the checkout lines. I should also note that I deal with some social anxieties, so I was looking around to assess my surroundings while waiting in line. Now, cue the Karen. She absolutely looked the part, down to the clearly fake blonde haircut and costume jewelry. She had a little girl in the cart who screamed bloody murder the instant she saw me. I immediately began to apologize to Karen that frightening her daughter was not my intent, but before I could finish, she cuts me off and begins the tongue lashing. Who the duck do you think you are going around like this, scaring innocent little kids when it's not even Halloween? What the hell is wrong with you? Keep in mind it was 5 days before Halloween. We locked eyes, and I responded with, "You're right that it's a few days before Halloween, but all the parties are tonight. But I'm a reasonable man, so I'll tell you what. I'll remove my face makeup if you take off your mask." She starts to respond with, "But I'm not where you SOB. How dare you speak to me like that?" I say, "But I did. So what now?" This is when I'm met with a sudden sharp pain to the knee as I fall over, Karen having rammed her cart into me. As I was still recovering from my stroke, my equilibrium was lacking and I fell straight to the ground. The cashier in our lane immediately paged for a manager and loss prevention, and Karen attempted to backtrack and leave the lane, but 2 other customers had blocked her in. As Fernando was helping me back onto my feet, I saw the manager and loss prevention rushing over to see the commotion. The manager and I sat on a nearby bench so I could explain everything that happened, and loss prevention led Karen in the opposite direction. After a few minutes, a police officer approaches. I greet the officer, identify myself, and he asks if I want to press charges against Karen for assault. I told him, "You bet your sweet ass I do." The cop radios to a partner, and a minute later, I see Karen being escorted out in handcuffs, followed by another officer carrying her young daughter. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.